In the first video of this series, we talked about the 3 excuses that Federer fans most often use when they insist that Roger is still the GOAT. And we debunked the first one, that Djokovic benefited from a weak era. I originally planned to cover the remaining 2 arguments in a single video, but since I found a lot of fun information for both topics, I decided to dedicate an entire video to each of them. In this video, we will discuss the second argument, that peak Federer is better than peak Djokovic. Is it a fact or wishful thinking? Let's find out. Among all the claims, arguments and comparisons in the GOAT debate, who peaked higher is probably one of the easiest ones to evaluate, because we have several solid metrics to measure it. We already used 3 of those metrics in the previous video to measure players' peaks: best season, peak ELO rating, and best ranking. So it makes perfect sense to apply the same method to compare Djokovic and Federer peaks. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's first compare their best seasons. This is how UltimateTennisStatistics.com ranks all-time best seasons. Djokovic's 2015 season is the best in history, followed by Rod Laver's 1969 in second and Federer's 2006 in third place. These rankings are based on a combination of tournament results, rankings, head-to-head matches against high-ranked opponents, and additional points for special achievements, such as winning a calendar slam in Rod Laver's case. But we are not going to simply accept these rankings. All I was looking for in this list was Federer and Djokovic's best seasons that we can compare, and those are 2015 for Djokovic and 2006 for Federer. As always, it is inevitable that some people are going to disagree with the choice of these seasons, but if you look at the numbers, these are the correct choices. The big titles column, which sums up titles won in slams, masters, and ATP finals tournaments, is a very good indicator for a successful season. And as you can see, Federer won more big titles in 2006 than in any other season. In 2006, Federer won 3 Grand Slams, an ATP finals, and 4 Masters 1000 titles. He also accumulated 15 top 10 wins, reached a season-high ELO rating of 2,532, and peaked at 15,903 ATP points. By the way, the ATP point system changed in 2009, and the total you see here is adjusted to match the current system. Let's compare all of this to Djokovic's 2015 season. Novak also won 3 slams and the ATP finals tournament, but he won 6 Masters titles to Federer's 4. And he had 31 top 10 wins to Federer's 15, more than twice as many. And he also peaked higher in ELO rating and ATP points. So by numbers alone, Djokovic's season was clearly better. But Federer fans always say that stats are not everything, and that numbers don't tell the whole story. And I agree. So let's take a closer look at these numbers and try to interpret what they're telling us. The stat where Djokovic has the biggest advantage is the wins against top 10 opponents, which suggests that he faced tougher competition. And this is in line with the conclusions we reached in 2 previous videos, when we analyzed who had the toughest path to slam titles and whose era is stronger, where both showed that Djokovic faced much tougher competition than Federer. Are those conclusions correct? Let's look at their opponents in the Grand Slams. At the Australian Open, Federer beat Kiefer in the semifinal and Baghdatis in the final, while Djokovic defeated Wawrinka and Murray. In the French Open, Federer beat Nalbandian in the semifinal and lost the final to Nadal, while Djokovic beat Murray and lost the final to Wawrinka. In Wimbledon, Federer beat Bjorkman and Nadal, and Djokovic beat Gasquet and Federer. And finally, in the US Open, Federer beat Davydenko and Roddick, and Djokovic beat Cilic and Federer. For those of you who are counting, Federer faced Nadal twice, while Djokovic faced Wawrinka twice, Murray twice, and Federer twice. But let's not stop there. Remember when these players peaked? Nadal's best season was 2010 and his peak ELO was in 2013, so Federer didn't face peak Nadal. On the other hand, Wawrinka's best season was 2015 and Murray reached his peak in 2016. So in 2015, Djokovic faced peak Wawrinka and near peak Murray. And even Federer's 2015 ELO rating is higher than it was in 2004. But more on that in the next video. Let's look at Federer and Djokovic's Masters titles from these 2 seasons. Federer won 4 Masters titles, and there isn't a single slam winner among his opponents. On the other hand, Djokovic in Indian Wells beat Murray and Federer. In Miami, Isner and Murray. In Monte Carlo, Nadal and Burdick. In Rome, Ferrer and Federer. In Shanghai, Murray and Tsonga, and in Paris, Wawrinka and Murray. That's Murray 4 times, Federer twice, Nadal on clay, and Wawrinka. All of this points to the fact that not only Djokovic's best season is better than Federer's, but that he indeed achieved all this against much tougher competition than Federer. And once again, the conclusions from my previous videos are validated. Federer fans can argue all they want, but the truth cannot be denied. Still not convinced? Let's compare Federer's best season to Djokovic's second best, 2011. Djokovic won 3 slams, he didn't win the ATP finals, but he won 5 Masters titles to Federer's 4, so in big titles they're tied with 8 each. Djokovic again had more top 10 wins, 21 to 15, but Federer peaked higher in ELO rating and ATP points. I am not going to argue that Djokovic's season was statistically better. Federer edges it by a slim margin, but let's look at the competition. In Australia, Djokovic beat Federer and Murray. In the French Open, he lost the semi-final to Federer. In Wimbledon, he beat Tsonga and Nadal, and in the US Open, he beat Federer and Nadal. That's Nadal twice, Murray, and Federer 3 times. And it gets really crazy in the Masters tournaments. In Indian Wells, Djokovic beat Federer and Nadal. In Miami, Fish and Nadal. In Madrid, Bellucci and Nadal. In Rome, Murray and Nadal. And in Canada, Tsonga and Fish. Those are victories over Federer, Murray and Nadal 4 times. All 4 times in finals, including twice on clay. This is even more impressive when we consider that this is prime Nadal. Nadal reached number 1 ranking for the first time in 2008, and he peaked in ELO rating in 2013. In this 6-year period, he won half of his 20 slams and 28 of his 36 big titles. And in this period, his weakest season in terms of big titles is 2011, when he only won 2. But at the same time, 2011 is Nadal's second best season in number of big finals. His problem in 2011 was that he lost all 6 of his matches against Djokovic, all 6 in finals, 2 Slam finals and 4 Masters finals. We will discuss Nadal more in future videos, but the point I'm making here is that even Djokovic's second best season, 2011, is more impressive than Federer's 2006 when you consider the level of competition. But in any case, when it comes to their very best seasons, whether you only look at the stats or go beyond the numbers, there is no doubt that Djokovic peaked higher. Next, let's talk about ELO ratings. If we look at the list of all-time peak ELO ratings, Djokovic holds the record. In second place is Borg, then McEnroe, then Nadal, and finally Federer's peak ELO is in 5th place. Not only is Federer 5th on the all-time list, but he is 3rd among his contemporaries, Djokovic and Nadal. But wait, there's more. This list only shows the highest ELO for each player. If we include multiple ELO ratings for the same player on the list, then Federer's peak ELO is in the 9th place, and Djokovic peaked higher than Federer's best in 3 different seasons, in 2014, 2015 and 2016. Also notice that almost all the seasons from Djokovic's prime are in the top 15. His prime was from 2011 to 2016, and the only season from that period that is not on this list is 2012. And finally, if we compare only Djokovic and Federer's ELOs, 5 out of top 6 ratings belong to Djokovic, and 7 out of top 10 belong to Novak. So when it comes to ELO ratings, Djokovic again peaked higher. And it's not even close. Which leads us to the last measure of peak, the highest ranking. Obviously, both Djokovic and Federer peaked at number 1. So how can we say who peaked higher in ranking? Well, Djokovic has more year-end number 1s and more weeks at number 1 than Federer. But some people will say that these are measures of staying power and longevity, and not of peak. However, there is a metric that we can use to measure their ranking peak, their ATP points records. Once again, keep in mind that the ATP points system changed in 2009, so I will show the numbers adjusted to the current system to make this a fair comparison. Federer set his ATP points record on November 20th, 2006. He had 15,903 points, more than second place Nadal and third place Davydenko combined. Djokovic set his record on June 6, 2016, when he peaked at 16,950 points, Not only did Djokovic peak higher, but he also had more points than second and third place combined. Those players were Andy Murray and none other than Roger Federer. So who peaked higher? Djokovic's best season is better than Federer's. 3 of Djokovic's ELO ratings are higher than Federer's highest, and Djokovic holds the record for most ATP points. And Djokovic did all of this against much stronger competition. Is peak Federer better than peak Djokovic a fact or wishful thinking? It is pure wishful thinking. Not only is peak Djokovic statistically superior to peak Federer, but when we consider the level of competition, the difference between them is even more impressive. This leaves the third and last myth, which we will cover in the next video, that Federer declined in 2011. Trust me, it's gonna be a fun one. Until then, please consider subscribing to the channel, and more importantly, share this video. Don't do it for Djokovic, do it for the GOAT.